How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for October 25th through October 31st of 2021. My name is Cam White. Thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'm so grateful for all of your support. This week, well, actually, before we even talk about this week, God, last week was so much. The full moon, Mercury direct, Jupiter direct. And also too, it was super funny. Wednesday, I was so exhausted right when the moon went into Taurus, and then like squared Saturn. It was like, I was expecting to kind of like, kind of coast down, but I ended up being like really, really, really tired. Anyway, I had a great full moon. I really hope you guys had a good full moon. And this is kind of like important in terms of talking about this week, because a lot of what this week is, of course, is still building off from like last week. Last week, again, we had Mercury station direct, Jupiter station direct, the full moon, something else. There's like three other things, I think. Anyway, let me go ahead and pull up the Transitarium. This week, we're starting this week really off with not that much going on. This week really only has a couple of major transits. The first one's going to be, where is it at here? Venus squaring Neptune. It's not really the worst transit ever, to be honest with you. It's kind of nice, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I know you guys are probably like, "What, Cameron? You always hate Neptune. What are you saying?" But it's Venus squaring Neptune. Like, it's okay to get a little lost in the sauce. But Venus will also sextile Jupiter. Mars is going to enter Scorpio, and we're also going to have Mercury trining Jupiter this week. So there's really a lot going on still, even though there's nothing like, all of the major stuff really happened last week. This is still kind of like, a lot of things really going on in the background, but not necessarily nothing major. I think maybe the only thing major is Mars going into Scorpio. However, I really don't think that's going to be important until like Mercury catches along. But anyway, let's talk about it. Anyway, we're starting Monday off with the moon making a trine to Mars before the moon will then ingress into Cancer and then make a trine to the sun. So I really like this because the moon's going to be in Gemini, right, where there's all of this stimulation, all of this need to communicate, all of this need to express, all of this need to talk. And as it's trining Mars in Libra, right, like Mars in Libra is like, trying to let go of defenses, still having to be very wishy-washy on things. And I know, it's super funny. I could see all the Mars people in the comments being like, I can't, I want to fucking blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, it's just really funny seeing who's what in the comments, how you guys react. And why I'm bringing this up is Mars in Libra, it's really difficult to always kind of like know when to like pause and know when to stop. Like Mars in Libra, again, it's kind of like trying to cut things with a really dull knife, with a really crappy knife. And sometimes that can like, it's more of a hazard to cut things with a really crappy knife or with a really, not good piece of equipment, right? When Mars enters Scorpio, let me assure you, by next week, things are going to get turned up to 11 or 12, and the Mars energy is going to be intense. And I'm going to be talking from a point of view of like, Mars is in Scorpio. It's time to go. It's time to like attack. It's time to be specific. It's time to like, but that's just not this time right now. And I think is the moon, Mars is just wrapping up Libra. There's still this sense of like, you're still in the courtroom. You can't really react. It's just not the right time. That's what I love about astrology, because all we're really doing here is, when we can kind of validate maybe how we're feeling, we can kind of maybe validate some of the things that we're seeing, and then understand that there's a time and a place for everything. And right now the time is like Mars and Libra stuff, right? Like not necessarily about having fights or doing something in a specific way, but it's much more about like working with what you have and having to compromise and having to adjust and having to, you're out of your own territory, you're out of your own, you don't have the resources available that you need to do the thing that you need to do. So you have to work with what you have, right? You're in someone else's house. That's the Mars and Libra thing. And that's the time and the place. Right now is the time and the place for this. When Mars goes into Scorpio, it'll be a little bit differently, or it'll be a little bit different. Anyway, I still can't talk. It was super funny. The girl, I just went to the grocery store to go get an energy drink, and the girl was like also like stuttering all over her words, and I was laughing because I was like, I do the same thing. Anyway, Moon's gonna be in Gemini, trining Mars. Again, this is kind of like we can use our words as tools. We can use relationships, like Mars and Libra is very kind of like, hey, like, how can I make this work? What can we do to, make things a little bit more even? Moon in Gemini, trining Mars in Libra is essentially like trying to at least communicate, or at least trying to express how we feel in a very peaceful manner. So that'll be a little bit funny, but why I think Monday is funny is because the moon will make this trine to Mars, which is nice, but then the moon will go into Cancer and immediately start to trine the sun, where things get really wet. Now, in my 2022 year ahead horoscopes, which should be posted, I think I'm going to be posting them in November, so get ready for those. But I kind of make a point about, like, there's a lot of water transits in 2022. And when, like, I've been doing this for almost, like, 6 years, and, like, we really haven't had a lot of water transits since, like, 2012, I think. I think it was 2012 when we had Saturn in Scorpio and Jupiter in Cancer, or Jupiter... No, it was 2014. It was 2014 when we had Saturn in Scorpio and Jupiter in Cancer. It's also funny, too. That was one of the wettest winters on record. And in the past couple, I think the past decade, there was like this huge freeze over that winter. Which I also think is going to be a pretty big freeze over this winter. That's not a crazy prediction or anything like that. But anyway, there's a lot of water transits coming up. In the next couple of weeks, or not the next couple of weeks. Yes, in the next couple of weeks, but there's also a lot of water transits coming up in this next year. And things are just going to get like really wet, which I'm just really excited for, even though I know you guys know me. I don't like talking about water transits that much. I'm all fire and air. But I think for a lot of you who are water signs, this is really replenishing, right? As the moon goes into Cancer on Monday and then makes that trine to the sun, I think there's that real big hit of like wetness, of like moisture. As the moon goes into its home sign of Cancer, it's trining that sun in Scorpio. There's this emotional depth. There's this like really feeling. But the sun's in Scorpio, right? The sun is representing our ego and it's in Scorpio. We might be kind of attached to like the really intense emotions that we feel. Our ego is really kind of fixated on the more guttural, more instinctual, more primal, more intense feelings, and that could be a little bit triggering. As the moon goes into Cancer, we're going to be really like, what's a good word for this? I think saturated with our feelings, or our feelings will be very saturated. This is good for one sense of like really feeling something in depth. There's been a lot of air transits lately, so it's really easy to intellectualize things and not necessarily feel it, right? This is really the time to feel it. It's just what's important, I think, is the sun's in Scorpio is like, try to calm down. Try not to like, just because you feel something doesn't mean you need to hit the gas, right? Just because you panic doesn't mean you got to react to it immediately. So anyway, that's Monday. I know I kind of talked about like everything else, but that's essentially Monday for you. Moon's going to go into Cancer and make that trine to the sun, where again, it's really just about feeling things. And the water stuff that's going to be coming up soon is going to be, I think, for a lot of you guys, really, really exciting. Maybe not for me. But anyway, we get into Tuesday on the 26th. Venus squaring Neptune while the moon squares Mercury. So I like Venus squaring Neptune. I know that sounds controversial, but I don't like it while the moon is squaring Mercury. Let's go ahead and talk about it. So let me tell you why I like Venus square Neptune. I like Venus square Neptune because Venus is all about having fun, right? Venus is all about indulgence. Venus just wants to connect. Venus just wants to embrace. Venus just wants it. And in Sagittarius, Venus is about freedom. Venus is about that adventure. Venus is about that story, right? And when you get Venus in a Jupiter-ruled sign, there's the sense of romanticizing or idealizing something. Venus in Sagittarius is like that fire, that excitement of what could be, of what is out there, of where things can go. And as it's squaring Neptune, where it can be bad is to say like everything that you imagine isn't necessarily what's going to be. Where it could be good though is Venus squaring Neptune is just an aspect, right? A square could literally just be a correction. A square isn't always, again, sometimes we read this way too deep. I'm like, oh, Venus squaring Neptune, not everything's going to be the way that I expected it to be. Well, also just stop having expectations on things. But as Venus squares Neptune, it's like, this could just be a correction. As Venus is in Sagittarius, maybe you're wanting to explore a certain idea, or you're wanting to have more fun and be more adventurous. And as it squares Neptune, maybe you go and do that, and it's not exactly the way that you pictured it, but it's still fun and it's still enjoyable. I think the biggest thing here is just, it's not about lowering your expectations, just to stop having expectations. With Neptune and Pisces, right? There's this. Here's a good example. Neptune and Pisces. When you see some Instagram post, or when you see someone posting about somewhere that they're traveling to, and it looks so perfect on the picture, and it looks a certain way on the picture, but then you get there, and it's not actually what it looked like on the picture. It's not actually what you thought it was. It's still great. It's still fun, but it's just, you realize that sometimes you could see something differently than what than what you perceived it to be. And I think as Venus squares Neptune, that's just what we're kind of looking at here. I think it's fun for, again, like, if you really want to be creative and if you want to have fun, this is a good opportunity. It's just going to be one of those things of just be open-minded to what, can happen. I think if you're expecting a certain thing and you just have to have it a certain way, I think you're going to be, met with failure. But Venus is in Sagittarius, we want to explore, we want to have fun, we just want to move on from things and, get out of our heads. And again, freedom, fun. And the biggest thing here is, I can't emphasize this enough. Venus is going to be in Capricorn for 5 months. 5 months. Think about that for a minute. Let's think about that for a minute, because the last time Venus retrograded in Gemini, I believe when Venus retrograded in Gemini in 2020, I believe Venus entered Gemini, I think it was March, and then April. It was the beginning of May is when Venus stationed retrograde. No, I think Venus must have entered in April, May, June, and then she must have not left until July. So 2020, Venus was in Gemini for 4 or 5 months. And then I think before that, when Venus retrograded in Scorpio, she actually went back into Libra. So she wasn't even in that one sign for that long. Like, Venus going into Capricorn for 5 months is quite some time. So as Venus is in Sagittarius, my advice is to enjoy it while it lasts, because some of you may not like Venus in Capricorn. Others of you are eagerly waiting for it. So either way, Venus square Neptune, I like that. Why I don't like this day, for a certain reason, is the moon's going to be squaring Mercury. So, Moon in Cancer squaring Mercury in Libra. So, like, not saying the right thing at all. Like, Moon in Cancer is like, you feel a certain way, and it's Mercury in Libra. You're trying to be polite. Yeah, like, have you ever heard people like try to be polite, but in their being politeness, they are actually like so rude that it's just like beyond cringe, and you're just like, stop talking. That's Moon square Mercury. So this is one of those things where again, Venus square Neptune is kind of like, you're going to have to move beyond things if they're not necessarily what you expected them to be, like, or you're going to have to move beyond things if they're not exactly what you expected them to be. I cannot talk today. Jeez, I'm really having to think. Because I think as the moon squaring Mercury, it's going to be really hard to articulate or maybe not articulate. It's going to be hard for someone to really understand what you're saying, because moon squaring Mercury is essentially like how you're feeling and what you're saying isn't necessarily on the same page, so you're not necessarily going to be really honest. And I think as Mercury's in Libra, and we're like, yeah, we just want to have the peace and we just want to get along, like, you're not actually going to be saying the thing that you need to say. So this might cause you to, or force you, I should say, to be much more considerate about what you're saying. Like, hey, are you actually expressing your needs? Are you actually expressing what you want to say? Or are you, just trying to be nice and trying to, keep the peace? That's why I don't like this day, because the moon's going to be squaring Mercury. But anyway, the big thing here is with the moon in Cancer squaring Mercury in Libra, it's just like, it's either be direct with how you feel and you can still be nice about it, or like keep your mouth shut and just move on. Anyway, let's get into Wednesday. The moon is going to then trine Neptune, while the moon then immediately makes a square to Mars. Well, not really immediately, but afterwards, after a little while. Wednesday is not a lot. Wednesday does not have much. I think as the moon's trining Neptune, again, what's important about this Neptune stuff, and this is going to be really important next year as we have Jupiter conjoining Neptune, it's going to be really important to understand what stories you're making up. Neptune is about deception, it is about perception, and it is so easy for people to perceive things a certain way just because that's what they're being fed. It's just because it's what they're seeing based on that perspective, right? Again, this is sometimes good, this is sometimes bad, because Neptune can make you see things in a way better light than maybe normal, and also can make you can distort things and not necessarily represent the truth. So as the moon's in Cancer on Wednesday trining Neptune, there is the sense of like what you're feeling is really validating whatever story you're making up. So, and this could be like, Neptune and Pisces. It's like, man, I'm really romanticizing this, and this moon in Cancer is going to feel really replenishing and really like nourishing of like, yes, that is correct. This is how you feel. And I think it's your job to really know of like, hey, are you just kind of like, are you asking people the right questions? Like, are you being honest with people? Are you, or like, are you making up, like, I think the big thing with Neptune is like, are you making up a story, or are you like, or is this how you actually see it? It's okay to romanticize things. What's bad about Neptune though is when you make up a certain story about something and you don't confirm that, then you're getting your emotions all mixed up on stuff that you don't need to be mixed up on. And that moon in Cancer trending that is like, this is where it's like, you want to have the right story with this, because if you're seeing things the right way and you can romanticize the situation, then this is a good time to feel it and to like enjoy that feeling, right? But if you are perceiving things in a way that's not necessarily lining up, and you do need to be much more like critical of like, hey, is this what I'm seeing? Is that what I saw? Am I right for thinking this way, or am I making up a story? That's really what Wednesday is. It's really bad. And I think that also comes from Venus squaring Neptune too, of like, hey, this is great, but I thought it was going to be this way, or I thought it was this. And I think the hard part again too about Tuesday is that moon's going to be squaring Mercury, so it's like you're going to feel like something, like you need to say something, but being able to express it might be really hard. And as we get into Wednesday, that's much more of when you will be either validating that story or validating the really nice romanticization of the story. But the other thing is on Wednesday is the moon's going to be then, after it trines Neptune, it's pretty much applying to a square with Mars all day. So again, this is why it's important to not make up stories and to be very clear about things, is because it's that moon applies to Mars and Libra all day. Like, look, they're 6 degrees away. So the moon moves 1 degree every 2 hours. So that's 6 degrees. That's 12 hours starting from 11. So pretty much all day, the moon's going to be applying, doing nothing else but making an application to a detrimental Mars. This is like, we're feeling our emotions are very valid, and we're trying to like nourish our emotions. That's the moon in Cancer transit, right? But it's squaring Mars in Libra. Getting to work with other people is not going to be easy. Getting to, get both sides to win is not going to be easy. Mars is in Libra, right? Where there's the sense of like, well, like I can't do this because for other people, or I got to do this because of this. Like there's going to be this emotional imbalance with like, how you feel and trying to work with people, trying to negotiate, or trying to problem solve is a good word for this. So anyway, Wednesday just seems very, a little bit of tug of war. Just again, my biggest thing is with the Neptune stuff. Just try not to make like a bunch of stories up in your head if you're not seeing something correctly. Then we get to Thursday, where the moon will then enter Leo. It makes that opposition with Saturn. It does also square the sun, but Venus is also going to be sextiling Jupiter on Thursday. Again, I don't know if I actually emphasized this enough in the beginning of this video. This is a decent week. This is a few, like Mars going into Scorpio is probably the only worst thing, but there's some little tiny transits that are kind of sprinkled in that really make this week enjoyable. Excuse me. Moon's going to enter Leo though, right? That moon, it's about our emotions, about what we're feeling. It's about, what our needs are. Moon's going to be in Leo, where attention, validation, witnessing, being seen is going to be really important. The moon is going to be applying to a square with the sun. So the sun's going to be in Scorpio, where it's like you're getting the attention, but maybe not the attention that you want. Moon's in Leo, where it's, squaring your sun in Scorpio, where there's a little bit of your ego's kind of getting a little bit checked. And the moon's going to go opposite Saturn, where there is this kind of like, hey, I'm very serious about how I'm addressing this. The moon in Leo opposite Saturn is like, if you're going to perform, you're going to be really serious about how you perform. The moon in Leo is like, if you're feeling prideful, like this is like, it's not just like, oh, I have this passion, I want to be authentic. Like, as Saturn's been in Aquarius, it's really like, hey, if you're going to stand out and be an individual, if you're going to look at yourself, like, you got to really fucking stand out. You got to really sell the crowd. You know what I mean? You can't just fake it. You got to be about it. And I think as that moon's squaring the sun's also coming up with that square with Saturn, which we're going to talk about. But that moon in Leo, it's like, again, I think you might be getting attention, but maybe for the reasons you don't want them. You don't want to have attention. I think our pride's going to be really on the table, but I think as it's opposite Saturn and squaring Sun, just like hey, not everything has to be super serious. I think this is a time where it's going to be really easy to like be really charged up and like taking everything really seriously because that Sun's in Scorpio, Moon squaring Sun in Scorpio. It's like Leo and Scorpio kind of clash. I don't know if you guys know that. But also Scorpio and Aquarius also kind of clash. I don't know if you know that. It just seems very like, our pride's going to be kind of getting in the way. It's going opposite Saturn. It's kind of like just do what you can, suck it up. Sun and Scorpio, know where you kind of have to, know where you can shine your light, know where you don't really want people to shine a light, right? The Sun's in Scorpio where everything's dying. It's fall now. What are we holding on to? What are we scared to let go of is another way to look at it. And as that Moon's in Leo squaring the Sun, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Am I... again, the wrong lighting can make someone look really, really ugly. Like I put this key light like underneath and up, like I would look horrible. It's just one of those things where I think Thursday is kind of like feeling really passionate, feeling really excited about something, being really serious about it. And I think, again, as a Leo, as a fixed sign person, it's just really easy to take things so seriously. Why so serious? But I think just chill out. And I think if you don't take this as seriously, it'll be really easy to kind of move on. Otherwise, I think if you're really in a serious mood and you're really kind of like, up in your head with things, this is going to be really easy to like have a shit day. Also, because on Thursday, Venus is sextiling Jupiter. And this is why I think you should get over it. Because Venus is sextiling Jupiter. Like, the sun and the moon is like, again, the sun and the moon is like your emotions and your ego. Like, that's just day-to-day stuff. Just let it go. Get it over with. The bigger picture here is Venus is sextiling Jupiter. Venus is in Sagittarius. It's in Jupiter's home sign. And it's actually making a contact with its ruler here. That's important. Venus is in Sagittarius, where we've talked about this, a lot already in this horoscope. But Venus is about fun, connection, indulgence. She's in Sagittarius, which is about exploring, adventure, mysticism. It's sextiling Jupiter, and Jupiter's in Aquarius, where this is kind of about, Jupiter in Aquarius is like exploring or like adventuring or like having faith or mystifying and creating stories around like what's on the outside of the walls. Right? Like Aquarius is being outcasted. Aquarius is bigger groups of community, right? And I think as Saturn's in Aquarius, there's a sense of either being inside or being outside of that. And Venus sextiling Jupiter in Aquarius is like exploring, both ends of it. But I really think it's about kind of going outside of a certain perspective, going outside of a certain ideology. Jupiter being in Aquarius is like our beliefs are really rigid right now. The way that we have to believe and the way that we have to have hope is very fixated. It's in Saturn's sign. We don't really have a choice on that one, but we could still have hope. We could still have optimism, right? I think Venus sextiling Jupiter is like, if you explore, if you adventure, if you, like, again, tell stories, if you just be excited about something, go and explore something, go and, get excited about something. I think this is going to kind of give us more hope about, the communities that we're involved with, the people that we're involved with, or, even for certain people, the walls that you're maybe stuck in, or for other people, the walls that you're stuck out of. There is this sense of kind of like really enjoying. It's the two benefics like in harmony with each other and with reception, right? Because Venus is in Jupiter's sign, sextiling Jupiter. So there is this excitement to Thursday, right? There is this fun and adventure. I think the only thing is Moon opposite Saturn is like, we're just going to be taking this so seriously. Like it's just, and also too, let me just reiterate, things get very, very serious from here on out. Like this is all of this Libra and Sagittarius stuff is so much fun right now, but like things are going to get very, very serious in the astrology. When Venus is in Capricorn for 5 months and everything transits Scorpio, squaring Aquarius, yeah, we're going to be pretty butthurt. A lot of people are going to be really butthurt. Anyway, that's Thursday. Like Thursday is like it's good, it's exciting, but it's really kind of like like you're gonna have to like check your ego and not let that get in the way. Friday on the 29th, that's when we're going to be having the moon still in Leo, make a sextile to Mercury as it goes opposite Jupiter. I think this is a little bit better because now the moon is away from the sun, but the moon's going to be pretty much applying to Mercury for the majority of the day. Mercury's in Libra, where again, we're working with people, we're communicating, we're communicating through a perspective of relationships, right? Through a perspective of harmony. That's the Mercury's in Libra. Its job is to communicate peace, communicate harmony, communicate and work things together. That doesn't always work because Mars is there, but anyway, as the moon's in Leo, sextiling Mercury, our pride, being authentic, what we're passionate about, being able to express that easily is here. Moon in Leo is really feeling ourselves and at least being able to express that and communicate that effectively and actually feel heard, actually feel witnessed, and not necessarily feel as the moon's in Cancer squaring Mercury, it's you might feel something, but getting someone to understand that might be something else versus this is someone being able to understand you, someone being able to get that picture. The moon's also going to be opposite Jupiter after it sextiles Mercury, where this is really seeing the bigger picture, right? The moon's in Leo where it's you have your feelings, which are valid, but you also have Jupiter in Aquarius, which is everyone else. And so, it's super interesting how, during this pandemic and everything that's kind of going on, it's so interesting with Saturn transiting Aquarius, right? Saturn transiting Aquarius in the 90s and even in the 60s wasn't so it's just so alive right now. That idea of Saturn Aquarius of being fixated in our ideologies, our community beliefs, our way of thinking, right? And when planets transit Leo that go in the sign of the individual versus the sign of the collective, there is this it's an opposition. And I think as the moon being about our emotions and how we feel in Leo, there's all this individual pride, individual feelings. And as the moon goes opposite, the moon's going to sextile Mercury, there's this ability to communicate things. But as the moon goes opposite Jupiter, it's really about how do we integrate the two, right? Moon in Leo is here's all your feelings. Jupiter in Aquarius is well, here's how everyone else thinks. Here's where everyone else is at. Here's where this might be how you feel, but this is what you got to integrate that into. How do you do it? I think Friday is going to be about really kind of how do we get, how do we make a win-win situation of, getting your feelings met, being able to express that, and then also being able to integrate that within everybody else, right? Being able to say hey, I'm not just, my problems aren't just ignored because, I'm a part of a, subgroup of everything else. Jupiter in Aquarius, again, is our belief, our faith, our ideologies are really fixated. It's in a fixed sign. It's in Aquarius. It's hey, we got to do what, kind of everyone wants us to do. Jupiter's in Saturn sign here, and Saturn's there. There's a lot of serious around where our views on things. It's really fucking serious. And I just think as the moon's in Leo opposite Jupiter, this is really kind of about confronting your views, your perspective versus a collective's, right? And so it'll be pretty interesting as we go into Saturday. Now, what's interesting about Saturday is Mars will enter Scorpio. Sun's going to square Saturn the same day Mars enters Scorpio. I don't like that. That's why I don't like the Mars. I like Mars being in Scorpio. And of course, I've told you guys I don't like Mars squaring Saturn. I've told you that's going to be the worst day of the year. It's not going to be good. I just don't like that Mars enters Scorpio while Sun's squaring Saturn. It's double whammy. But the moon is also going to be entering Virgo, making a sextile to Mars, which does lighten the load a little bit. So as we go into, as we go into Saturday, Mars is going to enter Scorpio. Like I said before, the anger and frustration that collectively people are feeling is going to get really, really, really loud. So I want you to think, for example, there is a courtroom. I've been using that courtroom analogy for a couple weeks now, and you kind of just have to take shit in the court. The second you get out of court, though, you're really free to kind of express how you might feel about something. And I think as Mars goes into Scorpio, that anger, that rage, it's going to get turned up louder. On just, it's super interesting because right now, so much of, and again, I don't speak for everyone when I say this, but so much of what current events are going on right now are just affecting individuals at such a higher concentration than normal. I think as Mars goes into Scorpio, there's this Mars, let's talk about what Mars rules, right? There's two benefics, which are the good planets, Venus and Jupiter, and there's two malefics, Mars and Saturn. Both of the malefics are in their highest, their best sign. They're in their domicile, where they have access to all of the resources and all of the tools that they need. Saturn's in Aquarius, right? For example, I feel like Saturn in Aquarius is like one of the reasons why, like, I don't want to say this how I feel. Like, literally, Saturn entered Aquarius and lockdown started. Like, that's so, like, Saturn entering its home sign, lockdown, social distancing, those kind of words, right? Mars rules knives. Mars rules weapons. Mars rules anger, fight, conflict, separating, cutting, inflammation, stabbing. Specifically, Scorpio rules if Aries is like more of like swords and like gunpowder, Scorpio is much more of like a needle. But I think as Mars goes into Scorpio, you're going to see more. Now that Mars has access to the resources and the tools that it needs, you're going to see Mars express itself better, right? Mars can't necessarily express its inherent qualities the best in Libra, because Mars's inherent qualities are about frustration and like action and like confrontation, right? And it can't do that in Libra. So it's a big challenge. Versus this is very, very natural. The reason why I think this is so intense is that it's going to be squaring Saturn also in its home sign. So there's like the two bad planets are literally going to be squaring each other. And they're not going to be budging. These are fixed signs. Like, no one's really changing their mind on things. But I think as Mars enters Scorpio, anger, frustration. Now, I want to make sure I emphasize on that, because you're going to see it. And like, this is going to be a pretty frustrating time for a lot of people. Now, let me also say the other end of this for the people that really like these type of transits. Like, this isn't going to be a good transit for me, but of course not every day is going to be bad, because that's life. Where is Mars and Scorpio going to be good? Well, if you're someone like me and it's really easy to be like passive or lazy, Mars and Scorpio, you're going to have a lot of energy. You're going to have a lot of drive. You're going to have a lot of like, rage is fuel in a lot of ways, truly. Revenge is fuel in a lot of ways. And so when we talk about fuel, when we talk about energy, that's going up. Mars squaring Saturn is if no one tells you to do something, you're not really worried about it, right? You're not really thinking about it. But someone's like, no, like they really force you, like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. You're like, kind of like, hey, well, like, when people present authority to you, there's a natural resistance to it, right? That's just life. That's just human nature. And I think as Mars goes into Scorpio, that resistance to that, I mean, if you haven't already seen it, it's only going to get turned up louder. But also on the inside, though, of like, there's just going to be this kind of resistance and push back with like certain, limitations. That's Saturn in Aquarius. And, on an individual level, because that's really where I want to keep it. It's hard to fucking talk about this stuff sometimes without bringing up like current events, but I'm trying really hard to not do that all the time. But Mars and Scorpio, it's like, dude, you're going to feel certain ways and you're going to act them out, right? You're going to take action on that. The problem is Mars is combust, so it's like you feel the anger, but you're not necessarily like understanding. Like, you ever been like pissed about something, but you're just like, why you're mad or how to deal with that anger. Is that solution isn't always necessarily there, or that understanding. Like, that's Mars combust, right? Mars conjoined the sun, which was like starting over. Mars is still rehabilitating as it's leaving the conjunction with the sun, right? So there's still this kind of like coming into yourself, like really getting, back in shape, almost is a good way to put it. But as Mars goes into Scorpio, again, there's just going to be this feeling of like intensity, this feeling of like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. There's just going to be this feeling of regression. There's going to be this feeling of like, aggression. There's going to be this feeling of like, you need to do something very specific, and all of your emotions are attached to your actions, which is good for some people, right? Like, this is really like Mars and Scorpio is like, again, like something I really like about metal music. Like, a lot of the hardcore music is in mosh pits there. Like, a lot of people do like crowd killing, which is just pretty much beating the shit. Like, everyone like truly beats the shit out of each other in a pit. Like, some people like will go in a push pit for like, like, I don't know, like Iron Maiden. That's not an actual mosh pit. People will make a mosh pit for like a rapper or like an EDM artist. Not a real mosh pit. Actual mosh pits are like people like pretty much beating the crap out of each other. And there's what I love about metal is that's a safe space for that, right? Like, it's encouraged, like, yeah, we're about to get down, and it's it's a safe place to feel rage and feel emotion. And that's like that Mars and Scorpio, right? Like that, those feelings exist. And sometimes I think in society, it's super easy to repress and not acknowledge it. I just think it's going to be much more difficult to ignore it in any capacity during this transit. So I think a way to get out of that, though, is to be direct, be confrontational, and feel your feelings, but have an outlet. Like that's something, what I love about the hardcore scene too, and a lot of people can attest to this. A lot of them are really nice people, and it's because we have a healthy place to get our rage and anger out. Unlike it's like in society, most people just drink their fucking problems away, or they're fucked up on pills, or they just check out of their reality. Again, metal music is really, really cool for all that kind of stuff. But it's when you have a way to express that anger, that's a safe space that you can really feel the rage. You're not going to have those tendencies to feel that. So again, I think the biggest thing is starting on the 30th, have an outlet for that. I think Mars and Scorpio too is, it's sexy, it's fun, it's intense, but it is squaring Saturn. So check yourself, have a safe place to express that stuff. Have a safe place to, go crazy, go stupid. But I think is my only worry with this, and my only concern is this is going to be a really intense transit, but this is one of those transits where it's have you ever seen those videos of it's some kid and he's driving, he wants to look cool for the camera, so he just decides to speed up a little bit faster than normal and then he crashes the car? That's this. If you go a little bit beyond what you're capable of, you're going to get checked real quick with this. So that's my only warning. Also, though, the sun's going to square Saturn. So our sun in Scorpio, right, squaring Saturn in Aquarius, that ego is going to get checked. You're going to get pushed a little one too many times, I think. I mean, look, the moon's at 29 Leo right here. It's going to go to 0 Virgo, where it's it's on Regulus, right? Our emotions are going to be really inflated at this time. And I think as the sun squaring Saturn, it's you ever just get pushed one again? You ever just get pushed one too many times, and you gotta define a boundary. This is the thing too, that we live in such a passive society and a passive world. You've got to draw a line in the sand. You've got to tell people how the fuck it is. And I think this is something I was trying to say with the Libra stuff is you can't do that with the Libra stuff. It's no, just chill, just work out. We have a time for that. This day, sun squaring Saturn, Mars enters Scorpio, moon's at 29 Leo going into Virgo. I think someone might cross you one too many times, or do things just a little bit over your boundaries, and you might have to check someone. And that doesn't mean again, what's important is don't react, because don't do something stupid, because again, it's just one of those times of if you just do one little thing wrong, you really fuck shit up. But this is going to check your ego, and I think as Mars goes into Scorpio, this is not a day where you go, fine, I'm just going to be okay. I think you're going to draw a line in the sand, and I think that's important. You know what I mean? Mars is going to go into Scorpio and squaring Saturn. You got to know when enough is enough. You got to know how you feel, and you got to be able to confront that. Mars and Scorpio squaring Saturn and Aquarius is sometimes, sometimes arguments have to happen. Sometimes, and I think what's shitty about Scorpio and Aquarius, because they're both these Mars and Saturn, is there's no real winning oftentimes, and I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of winning with this, but this is important with this, the sun's in Scorpio. We're really thinking about our true emotions, our true feelings, what's guttural. And I think as the sun squares Saturn, Mars and Scorpio, you're going to kind of react. It's been building up for a while. You're going to kind of, put shit in place, check people, and I think you should. That's what this is for. I think you will get checked too if you step out of line. So it's just heightened emotions. Let's get into Sunday. Mercury's going to trine Jupiter. Moon's going to trine Uranus. I know I don't talk about the moon trining Uranus ever because it's really not even a transit. But let's just talk about this. Mercury's going to be trining Jupiter. Mercury's in Libra still, right? Mercury wants to communicate peace. Mercury wants to be hey, Mercury is actually being rational. When Mercury goes into Scorpio, it's just fucking cutting straight to the chase, straight addressing the elephant in the room, saying what needs to be said, not being afraid to really say it how it is either, not being afraid to hurt people's feelings. Mercury in Libra is like, there's still this like, hey, I'm trying to work with you. I'm trying to create some peace. I'm trying to show you that, show you both perspectives of things. And as Mercury's trining Jupiter, Jupiter's now direct. We just had Mercury trining Jupiter both retrograde. So this is a rethinking of our beliefs. This is a rethinking of our, our ideology, right? As Mercury's direct trining Jupiter at this point, this is really getting a lot more clear of maybe seeing that other side, of seeing a different perspective. And I think that's also because Mars is going to be in Scorpio. It's going to be kind of going, oh, it's like you will see people's other perspective will be known, I think is a good way to put that. And the moon's going to be trining Uranus. Like, honestly, like that's like, I was looking through, like the moon's only aspect. It's like the moon will eventually make a square to Venus on Monday, but that's really it. The moon's going to be making this trining Uranus though. So maybe an inventive, breakthrough, destabilizing like moment in the day, but I really wouldn't worry about that. I just wanted to put that there so you guys would stop yelling at me. Anyway, that's Sunday. Mercury trining Jupiter. I think what's good about Sunday is Mercury's in Libra, right? We're thinking in terms of peace. We're thinking in terms of rationality, of what's fair, of what's right, what's just. Mercury's trining Jupiter in Aquarius is like, this makes sense. I see this perspective. Jupiter in Aquarius is really seeing things outside the box. But Mars just entered Scorpio, Sun still entered Scorpio. It's just a little bit intense now. You know what I mean? There's a certain point where, someone might joke something, for example, like, certain jokes aren't, I don't want to say certain jokes aren't really funny because I'm a big fan of comedy, really. But there's a certain line that, people really can't cross. And there's two ways of living life. You can have that person cross that line and, you could be a doormat and be kind of a bitch, or you could say how you feel and actually be real with it and be real with people. And, just like you have to deal with other people's feelings, they have to deal with your feelings too. So let's talk about next week. Next week, like I said, really enjoyed this week. I know I just sat here being like, oh, Mars is going to go into Scorpio. It's like, this isn't really a bad week, in my opinion. You're going to get checked a few times, which, if you've got a weak ego, yeah, you're not going to like this week. But if you can kind of suck it up and get over it and, do the things you have to do, it's not going to be a hard week. It's going to be an enjoyable week. Again, if you let yourself enjoy this week, it will be enjoyable. Next week's not really like that. Mercury leaves shadow, which is great, but then it just immediately is going to enter Scorpio and conjoin Mars. But Mercury leaves shadow. We're finally done with all of the things that we've been dealing with since the beginning of September. We're moving past that. We have the new moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus. I talk a lot about that. Well, because we start November next week. Come to my Patreon. I have monthly horoscopes for you guys, so you know what's going to go on for you every single month. So these weekly horoscopes make sense. Anyway, November horoscopes are already on my Patreon, but I talk a lot about this new moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus. This is kind of really shocking stuff. This is really destabilizing stuff. This is really uprooting a lot of things, right? This is bringing attention to the Scorpio stuff, the stuff that we don't want to see, the stuff that we don't want to acknowledge, and it might cause a little bit of a shock and awe. Venus enters Capricorn, where it's going to be for 5 months. Do you know how long that is? That is half of a year we're going to have Venus in Capricorn. Almost half of a year we'll have Venus in Capricorn. Really think about that for a moment. And Mercury's going to enter Scorpio, where then again, it ain't going to be about Mercury and Libra. It's like, oh, let's be Mercury and Scorpio is going to be like, this is how the fuck I feel. Get over it. Deal with it. A lot of you are really ready for that, and a lot of you are not ready for that. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all goes. But next week really kicks off the rest of this year. The rest of this year is intense, guys. We've got Mars going through Scorpio, going to be squaring Saturn, squaring Jupiter. And then Venus will station retrograde on Pluto. In the midst of that, Jupiter will enter Pisces. There's a lot going on this winter. We're going to have Mars in Scorpio, Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter in Aquarius, with Venus in Capricorn. Does anything sound like fun about that? That sounds very serious to me. That sounds very real and raw to me and very cutthroat and dry. So prepare yourself for that type of energy. Get ready for that. Enjoy the peaceful, fun Venus and Sag, Mercury in Libra, Mars in Libra. Everyone's like passive and it's just like, enjoy it while it lasts. So anyway, with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.